Welcome back to our journey through the Bible. For 40 years, the Israelites had wandered in the wilderness. An entire generation had been born, lived, and died under the endless desert sky, never knowing the taste of milk and honey that God had promised their ancestors. Now, standing on the eastern banks of the Jordan River, everything was about to change. Joshua stood at the edge of the camp, his weathered hands gripping his staff as his eyes scanned the horizon. Before him, the Jordan River roared with its spring flood, swollen by melting snows from Mount Hermon. The waters churned brown and violent, stretching far beyond their usual banks. On the other side, Canaan, the land of promise. But Joshua was no longer the young warrior who had spied out this land 4 decades ago alongside Caleb. Now he is the leader of an entire nation, chosen by God himself to succeed Moses. The weight of that responsibility pressed upon his shoulders. Suddenly, a voice cut through his thoughts. Joshua. He turned to see Eleazar the priest, the son of Aaron, approaching with several tribal leaders. "The people are asking," Eleazar said carefully, "how will we cross the river? There are no boats large enough, no bridges. Some are remembering Egypt, remembering the Red Sea. They're wondering if God will do it again." Joshua knowingly nodded. 3 days earlier, God had spoken to him with words that still echoed in his mind. "Today I will begin to exalt you in the eyes of all Israel, so they may know that I am with you, as I was with Moses. Gather the people, all of them." "It's time," Joshua commanded firmly. 2 million people, men, women, children, livestock assembled in a vast sea of humanity. Joshua stood on a raised platform where all could see him. "People of Israel," his voice carried across the multitude, "tomorrow you will cross the Jordan River and enter the land that the Lord your God is giving you. Tonight, consecrate yourselves, wash your clothes, purify your hearts, for tomorrow the Lord will do amazing things among you." The crowd murmured with excitement of the amazing things they will witness. Like the plagues in Egypt, like the parting of the Red Sea, like manna from heaven and water from rock. Old men told stories to young children of what they'd heard from their own fathers. Women washed garments in the small streams nearby. That night, fires dotted the camp like earthbound stars. Families prepared and prayed. How would God make a way where there seemed to be no way? When dawn broke, the sky was clear and bright. Joshua assembled the priests who carried the Ark of the Covenant, a sacred golden chest containing the stone tablets Moses had brought down from Mount Sinai, a jar of manna, and Aaron's staff. The Ark represented God's very presence among his people. "Here are your instructions," Joshua told them, his voice steady and sure. "The priests bearing the Ark will go first. When you reach the edge of the Jordan's waters, you are to step into the river and stand firm." Step into the river? But Joshua, we will be swept away. This is not about what we can do. This is about what God will do. You must step into the water first, not after it parts, not after it's safe. You must step in, and then God will act. Joshua then turned to the people. "This is how you will know that the living God is among you. The Ark of the Covenant will go into the Jordan ahead of you. As soon as the priests who carry the Ark set foot in the Jordan, its waters will stop flowing." The priests, dressed in their sacred garments, hoisted the Ark onto their shoulders, using the golden poles that ran through its rings, walked slowly toward the rushing river. The entire nation of Israel held its breath as the river thundered before them. The first priest stepped in. Miles away, something impossible happened. Upstream, the waters stopped flowing. Near the distant town of Adam, God created a wall of water that grew higher and higher. Downstream, the riverbed before them stood completely dry. The priests walked forward into the middle of the riverbed, the mud still wet beneath their feet, and there they stood firm, holding the ark high as the people of God began to cross. 2 million people crossing on dry ground, walking through what should have been a raging torrent. Children skipping across the riverbed, pointing at fish stranded in pools of water. Elderly men and women, who had been young when they left Egypt, now taking trembling steps into the promised land. Livestock driven across in vast herds. Carts laden with possessions rolling over the exposed river bottom. And in the center of it all, the priests stood motionless, holding the ark, in the space where God's power had overcome nature itself. Joshua had instructed one man from each of the 12 tribes to take a stone from the middle of the Jordan, from the exact place where the priests stood. 12 men waded to the center, selected large stones, and carried them up on their shoulders. These stacked stones would become a memorial, a testimony to future generations. As the sun was setting low in the sky, the crossing continued until every last person, every animal, every cart had safely reached the west bank. Only then did Joshua give the command, "Tell the priests to come up out of the Jordan." The priests now walked up onto the west bank. The moment their feet touched dry land, the waters of the Jordan returned. The river resumed its roaring course, flooding its banks as if nothing had ever interrupted its flow. The people stood in stunned silence on the west bank, then erupted in praise at what they have accomplished and witnessed. After 40 years of waiting, wandering, and wondering, they were finally here, the promised land. At Gilgal, their first camp in Canaan, Joshua erected a monument with the 12 stones taken from the Jordan. He gathered the people around it and said, "In the future, when your children ask you, 'What do these stones mean?' tell them, 'Israel crossed the Jordan on dry ground.'" He did this so that all the peoples of the earth might know that the hand of the Lord is powerful, and so that you might always fear the Lord your God. That monument is a testimony not just to a miracle, but to a faithful God who keeps his promises. He had promised Abraham that his descendants would inherit this land. He had promised Moses that he would bring them to a land flowing with milk and honey. And now, through Joshua, he had brought them home. The crossing of the Jordan wasn't just about getting to the other side of a river. It was about faith, stepping forward before seeing the way clear. It was about God's presence, represented by the ark, going before his people into impossible situations. It was about an entire nation learning that the same God who had delivered their ancestors from Egypt was still powerfully at work in their own generation. The priests had to step into the water before it parted. The people had to trust and move forward. And God met their faith with his miracle. As we look at this ancient story, we see a timeless truth. God often calls us to step forward in faith before we see the path clearly. He asks us to trust him in the floodwaters, to believe that where he leads, he will make a way. The Jordan River represents the impossible barriers in our own lives, challenges that seem too great and obstacles that appear insurmountable. God is faithful to those who trust him today. With faith, miracles come when we take that first step. When that moment comes, when we step forward with faith, God proves himself to be faithful even still today. Thanks for watching, and remember to like and subscribe for more stories of the Bible.